Hi, everybody. This is John from AU Pack Mule, and today we're in day 12 of our live streams, Game of Thrones questions. And today we have another special guest from the Small Council and obviously from her own channel. I've got a link in the description below of both to her Instagram page and her YouTube channel. And today we're going to talk about painting nails. No, I'm just kidding.
I was just going to say, if you're interested in nail polish, which will be, I think the Venn diagram of A Song of Ice and Fire and nail polish contains me, Catherine Cronall, and possibly another one, maybe T-Baby sometimes.
Sweet YFT, yeah.
Yeah,
Nico.
yes, definitely Anne, yeah. So there's 4 or 5 of us. But yeah, if anyone's interested in nail polish and listening to me talk about nail polish, then by all means, check out my channel. Thanks, John.
So obviously Clare Gray is here with us. Would you like to say hi, Clare, and tell us what's going on, with your YouTube channel and also your shop and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, thanks, John. Shameless promotion. Yeah, again, for anyone that's in the UK, I've just opened up a shop with my sister in the UK, but we're also online, and I'll ask John to put the website link in the description box. But it's handmade soaps, skincare, bath bombs, candles. Everything's vegan and handmade. So if you are interested in those kind of products, please check us out. This is beginning to sound like QVC.
That's what we want. Yeah, absolutely. If you're selling stuff, we want to buy it. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, so I think a few people know. I think Kraken has did an unboxing of some stuff that we sent him a couple of years ago. So I think some people know what it is that I do. It's a business that I've got with my sister. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. So things are very busy. We've just opened up last week, actually, and like I said, with the nail channel, it's kind of growing quite well. And check it out if you're interested in.
I've got to be honest, Clare, I've never seen the extent of nail polish collection that you've presented. It's truly amazing. I've seen collections of all kinds, and that's one of the things that I was just, Clare, it never ends with the shades, and it's just fantastic.
Oh God, this feels like a confessional Sunday.
All right.
I've got a problem. I've got a real problem with it. It's addictive. Let's not talk about it. Let's move on.
Well, before we do that, is there a link, a website that you're going to actually promote this on, or is it going to be in-shop only purchases?
It's both online and in the shop, where we've got most of it, but we also stock other shops and gift shops and stockists, and we also do wholesale as well. And we're also planning on starting to do subscription boxes later on this year. So you can get all of that information on the website, which is www.bubbleoff, which is all one word, .co.uk. If I had a card here, I'd throw it up at the camera, but I don't.
No, I'll put a link in the description later on as soon as we're done, and then we can get everybody that's going to see this later to check it out. Because I think one of the cool things about your shop is that most of the products that you sell are handmade.
All of them are, John. We make everything ourselves.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a true craft when you do that, because with nowadays everything's made by DuPont or some other high chemical company, and it's really cool.
Yeah. Sorry, the dog's trying to play as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Not right now. Sorry.
We're all trying to get your attention. I know. But that's one of the things that I'm truly grateful that, for you to spend time with us on a Sunday. We were watching Tony Teflon earlier, and James Bichelle from the Hypes Watch earlier today, and it's just like a perfect Sunday.
Yeah.
And of course, you were at work all day trying to get your shop open.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the day. Yeah, we still need to get a sign up outside actually, which is next week's challenge. But yeah, I was at work all day today.
Nice. So I wanted to thank everybody that's in from the chat. Column is here, Badak Flux, AirTouch Altanos is here, Marie Hill. So thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. We're going to ask Claire some questions from Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire book series, basically. The show I really am not going to get into, especially with the spoilers coming up. Not my thing. There's other channels that do that. So, but basically, the first question I have is funny because it has Gray in it. Is about Graywater Watch. There's certain places that are very special. You know, Winterfell, Crackclaw Point. I think Graywater Watch is one of those places that I'm not trying to. I haven't been able to figure out where George R.R. Martin is taking us. Is the place special, or is it just something that he puts in there to keep us guessing?
It's funny because I actually listened to you and MP talk about locations in your discussion last night, and you were talking about Ashai, about how it could be, it could potentially be one of those locations that you just hear about. It's just this kind of mystical land far away that exists to kind of and you know, as an out to like the real world kind of thing. So and it did actually make me think about other locations and different locations, and I think I don't think Graywater Watch. I do think we're going to see it. I do think we're going to see it. I think we're going to actually be there in the books, and I think, oh God, I promise not to go tinfoil and kind of off on a tangent, completely off on a tangent. But the thing that I'm thinking about Graywater Watch, and I think I've mentioned this in comments before, I've certainly spoken to other people about it, but when George mentioned that in the prologue for Winds of Winter that we would see Talissa, and not no, God, I'm getting the show mixed up already. Sorry, it's been a while. Jane Westerling, that we would see her in the prologue. And there's always been, you know, there's this pattern of alternate prologues where, in terms of location, again, so you will have Beyond the Wall, which was the first book, and then that swapped to Meister Crescent, and then it swapped again to, you know, when there's a prologue, it seems to alternate between those two locations. It's either Beyond the Wall or the others or the Wildlings, or it's Citadel based, or it's relating to a Meister or the location of a Meister. And where does this link to Graywater Watch? Well, we don't know where Jane Westerling is. Obviously, she disappeared in the book, so we don't know exactly where she is. I think if she's going to be somewhere that's a place, it's certainly a place of safety, because as a location, it's difficult for anybody to find. So I think she might be holed up there, and we're due for, and if you link this to, we're due for, in the next prologue, it to be a Meister related, because remember we had Six Skins at the end of Dance. So we're due for the prologue to be centered around a Meister, and usually, well, actually not usually, every time somebody dies in the prologue, always. So that, to me, that this is what I'm thinking. We're going to see Jane Westerling, and it's going to be related to a Meister. Those are the two things that I'm thinking about. So Meisters are usually involved in childbirth. It could be that it's the Graywater Watch. I mean, if we're going to lose somebody in a prologue, it's likely to be somebody that we've never met before, or we're not that emotionally invested in. So this is my crazy theory, and I'll just spit it out. What I think is going to happen is we will see Jane Westerling. We will see her giving birth, and she won't die in childbirth. She could do, but I think what's going to happen is the Maester at Graywater Watch, this is crazy fitting all this together, and it's completely out there, and it probably won't ever happen in a million years, but just imagine the location of the prologue is Graywater Watch. We know that Jane Westerling's going to be there, and there's going to be a Maester. Maybe it's the Graywater Watch Maester, and because he's involved in Jane's pregnancy, childbirth, he sort of, he, what do you call it, delivers the baby. Maybe he has to die for this knowledge that the Rob's heir she was pregnant and he's actually born. Now this probably has absolutely nothing to do with expediting the greater story. It could just be maybe Jane does turn up again, but why would she? What would be the reason for Jane to appear in the prologue? So that's my theory, that's my idea, and I think it might be at Graywater Watch because we haven't seen it, and we know that this is, maybe in my mind, this is something linked to Rob's will and something to do with that. But yeah, anyway, that's my idea about Graywater Watch.
This is so fantastic, folks. You guys need to get your shovels out because Claire's going to be digging deep on some of these that I never expected. I just really appreciate you sharing that because that's just like so incredible. Putting the prologues together, the Maester together, the throwaway character, relatively speaking, because of the show together, and that's just great. Great stuff. All because of Graywater Watch, right?
Yeah. But I do think we're going to see it. I think it is going to be a location that we visit just because it's difficult to find. So we have to find it. We have to be there, even if it's just very fleetingly in a prologue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that is so talked about, and yet nobody really even sees it. So it's just amazing, or describes it for that matter. We see a lot of lineage, who's father, who's the bastard, who's the parents of this person, like Peter and Robert Arryn, is that his father, things like that. Why do you think George, the way he writes, has so much? Is it just because he wants us to try to figure that out?
I think it's a classic part of the mystery, isn't it? You always it's something that's you've always got to consider. Actually, is this when you think about the story as it's presented? Sometimes we've got things in the story that are hidden and that we find, and they're the mysteries. Some things we've got in the story that seem quite obvious that we all have different interpretations on. But I think one of the kind of common, maybe it's just a way of making you feel comfortable about digging a bit deeper and looking for theories and additional stories, because one of the first things that you go to is lineage, and could that, and there's all sorts of, there's loads of things thrown in about pregnancies and babies, and I think at one time there's about 5 different women all pregnant around the same time that relate to those, the teenagers as we know them now, that like Jon, Daenerys, Rob. There's several of them that were born round about the same time, which immediately makes you think, well, were they all, did anything happen with that? Is that, were there any, I know that Tony, if he's watching, laughs at anyone talking about baby swaps and things like that, but we've had it in the story. We've had it with Jon and and the little monster up at the wall. We've actually had it in story. So I don't know.
It's canon.
Yeah. I think it's just a good go-to to make you feel comfortable about peeling back the layers of theory, thinking about could that be that person's child, father, mother, how are they related, and how are the houses related to each other. I think it's I don't know what George's motivations would be for having lots of that in the story, but I think it's there to make you feel comfortable about digging deeper, if that makes sense.
Oh no, it's exactly one of the things that I think George truly enjoys as a writer, is having so many people discuss this. I mean, entire industries have been built on the discussion of A Song of Ice and Fire. So I just think it's one of his desires in the whole story, the epic part of the story.
Yeah.
So can we talk about Euron Greyjoy a little bit? Obviously not the show Greyjoy, but in the book, do you think Euron is green-sighted, or is he just a madman?
I don't think he's green-sighted. I think he's got like a substance misuse problem with the old nightshade and the blue lips. I think he's got a real like addiction to it. And the only other thing that I can think of with Euron is a question more than anything. Why is he collecting religious men? He seems to be gathering a group of, he's got his brother obviously relates to the Drowned God. He's got the warlocks on the ship, and he's also, he's kind of, isn't he? I'm getting a bit fuzzy here, but doesn't he seem to be sort of collecting either religious icons or religious representatives?
Sure.
And that just makes me wonder. I think Euron is a magical character. Certainly, there's a lot of magical elements that seem to be linked to his story arc, but I don't think he's a green seer, and I don't think he's, and this is just a gut feeling, I don't think he's got anything to do with Bloodraven. And I think he is a maniac. I think he is just crazy. Yeah.
Sometimes people allow their ego to get so large that they want to be a god, like Caesar's in the past, things like that. And I think that's one of his issues, just because of the way that he behaves. And there's a lot of stories in the Bible where people try to go against God, and they use their own God to combat that. And I think that's similar to what Euron's doing. I don't know if that's similar to what you think, but that's the impression I get.
He wants it all, doesn't he? He doesn't just want the iron. He doesn't want the sea stone chair. He doesn't really seem that interested in it. He wants the Iron Throne, and he wants he wants as much as he can take. So I don't know. Do you think that Euron's motivation could be linked to like the history of the Ironborn and the defeats that they've had in the past? I know that they've had some brutal crushes in the past by the mainland, and I think he's trying to retain some former glory of some of the really strong kings of the Iron Islands in the past.
I think it's a lot more like Oberyn, in that he traveled the world and saw that there was power all throughout the Planetos, and he doesn't have to be limited to what the power he gets from the Sea Stone chair. And so he could surpass that. And that's, like I said, where his ego was built, because he could travel wherever he wanted, conquer anywhere, and still feel like, he was a Greyjoy. He did not so.
Yeah. What are you doing? Looking for more questions? Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, T baby.
Well,
Catherine.
yeah.
Hello, Catherine's part of the Venn diagram that I'm in with the nail polish. Hi, Catherine.
Nice. Thanks for being here.
And yeah.
Marie Hill's here. Jamie Sneed. Of course, Maester Payne is here now.
And Callum. Hi, Callum. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, hi. So my next question is kind of show related in that they've revealed a little bit more about this. Lav is here. Yeah, thanks for being here. With Ned's fever dream when he's at King's Landing after he got injured, and he's dreaming this dream again that is like a repetitive story being told, almost like you tell yourself a lie and you believe that lie because you've been telling yourself that for so long. Do you think that's what that fever dream was, or do you think it was really an accurate depiction of what happened at the Tower of Joy?
Have you ever had a fever dream?
Personally?
Yeah.
Oh.
Have you ever been really ill with the flu? And I don't mean man flu, I mean properly ill.
Man flu. I mean like a baby. Yeah. I don't think I've been like what you're saying, but I've had
a fever where and especially if you've taken a lot of cold medication or flu medication, you can have some dreams that are actually quite scary and surreal. And no, I don't think I think it's a representation of something that happened in Ned's past. But I don't think it's necessarily, it's not a memory, it's a fever dream. So that, you know, how accurate could it possibly be? It's there for a reason. It's because we can wildly interpret what that could possibly be. It's not a memory. It's a, you know, he's got an infection. He's got something wrong with his leg. Really bad. You know, he was badly injured, and he's got a horrible infection. I don't know I can't remember if they gave him anything. If they gave him milk of the poppy, and that's what gave him the fever dreams. But yeah, to me, it wasn't a memory. It was a fever dream. So anything, you know, it's a representation. But I don't know. If do you watch Callum will laugh at this actually, but do you watch Sherlock at all, John?
I've seen most of Sherlock, yes. Right.
Is anyone going to be really offended if I talk about a small thing? Because I don't want to spoil.
You can talk about anything you'd like.
Okay.
You're talking about painting nails, for goodness sakes.
Okay. Well, it's been out on the TV anyway, the last series, and a big part of that storyline was, even though Sherlock, who's a genius, you know, deduction, and he's got this superb brain, he had a childhood memory that had been buried, that was really traumatic. That he wasn't, it was something that he became aware of through a series of events when he was older. I'm trying not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but could something like that have happened with Ned? Some traumatic, there's so many things about Ned and his dreams that are up for interpretation. True. The fact that when it's not just about this promise, he seems to, from what I can recollect in various memories and dreams, talk about promises in the plural. So, and he seems to have, it's not so much what he's remembering and what he's saying, it's how he feels about it.
Sure. Kind of like Jamie, you know, where he has obligations.
He seems to feel a lot of guilt and shame. And, you know, we all know about Ned and his honor. But he seems to feel a lot of guilt and shame when he thinks about that. He doesn't seem to feel anger towards anybody particularly. It's almost like shame and regret, and these are the kind of emotions that he seems to portray when he is remembering things or reflecting on things, or when he wakes up from a dream or he has a fever dream. So everybody, I think, when we talk about the Tower of Joy, it's almost like we see on a TV show, the televisual representation laid right out for us in front of us, and it's like, well, yes, of course, this is what we all talk about happening at the Tower of Joy, but it's based on, what is it based on? It's based on really fuzzy stuff, I think. Right. Like really fuzzy stuff. So because we don't know the detail of it, you've got to think about how he feels and the motivations and how it makes him feel emotionally. And he does seem to feel a lot of regret and shame, and maybe that means he's trying to cover something up himself. You kind of, well, it's almost like maybe he wants to rewrite his own story in a different way to cut that out of his life. Maybe he's buried something that even he can't remember. So it's a tricky one. Have I answered that question, or
I was actually going to say, in regards to being a fever dream, like where you just have an episode, it sounded like he had relived this dream over and over again. And the fact that he tore down the tower, and the number of crypts that he made, or graves that he made, was important. The fact that he came in as like ghost or shadows was kind of interesting. And it's just, that's one of the reasons why I don't think it's truly accurately told to us from the books.
Well, when I was younger, I had several recurring dreams that not that I could fly. It was really weird. It was kind of like I would just jump up and kind of raise up off the ground, and could kind of walk in the air rather than fly.
Right.
And I had that dream several times when I was a child, and I can remember it quite clearly. Doesn't mean I can fly or I can jump in the sky. It just means that I did and I've now got that memory of those recurring dreams when I was younger, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what I can do.
Right.
So we've got to be careful and cautious, I think, when it comes to dreams, and not take, they're interesting as indicators and as as a basis, but I don't think we should take every single detail as accurate fact. A bit like prophecies, really.
Speaking of prophecies, Littlefinger has a little trick up his sleeve in regards to the tapestries from King's Landing, and he takes those to Harrenhal. What do you think is in those tapestries?
That's an interesting question. I know that Tony did some really good videos on the tapestries. I think
he has great videos on everything. So
he has great videos on everything. Yeah. I think that there's, just going back to what I can remember, he writes to Cersei, doesn't he? And requests the tapestries. So he's doing that because he knows that Cersei knows nothing about them. It's not going to be obvious to her what he wants them for, which is why he's asking her quite blatantly. So tapestries usually have a story woven into them, don't they? And tapestries can also relate to, maybe they can relate to sort of heraldry. So maybe there is something revealed in there about Harrenhal and who I don't know. I mean, this is a bit of a wide question, actually, when you think about it, because
absolutely,
it's cursed. So I always think about how things relate to each other, how they fit together. So you've got a cursed castle, some tapestries, and Littlefinger behind it, knowing something that other people don't know about those tapestries. So maybe it gives us something. Yeah, maybe it gives us something about the history of Harrenhal that we didn't know, and maybe that relates to what the curse is.
Yeah, the only thing that we really know is that there were some hunting scenes on them, and it might be the beginning of the end for Robert, as far as that's concerned. But I've always thought it was interesting that of all the things that Littlefinger could be involved in, because he's very monetarily invested. He's very sneaky in regards to a lot of the things that he does. Sorry, Lav. But he's very smart as well, and so he understands that the history is important as well. So I just love the discussion.
I think people. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here about Littlefinger, and think about it this way. I think Littlefinger's a bit of a Renaissance man. I think if you dropped Littlefinger into any era, including our modern times, he would thrive and survive, and he would adapt, and he would probably be quite successful with his social climbing, just as he is in Westeros. So I think he's a very interesting character from that respect. A lot of the characters, you could drop them into other books, into other films, into other stories, into other genres, and they would be completely out of place. But I think Littlefinger would be, he's a bit of a kind of man for all seasons, a little bit. And I think, I don't know, I try to think about what his motivations really could be. And, there's that quote that sometimes really good people do really bad things, but it just depends on why and what for. Is it a personal motivation, or is it some kind of, me personally, in my personal life, I've been involved in my career of campaigning for social justice, that all of on a million different platforms. So if I was dropped into Westeros, I could see myself being somebody that other people would think was a little bit like Littlefinger-esque. So I don't know. I sometimes I try to reserve judgment a little bit on Littlefinger and not jump to he's evil and Machiavellian, because I think he's interesting in that he could adapt to any situation. So the
thought of someone being evil is pretty subjective, but my commitment to the crown is the part that I question about him. From his very early age, it's obvious that he's out for himself, unlike Varys or anyone else. So but I do agree with you, and I've never heard of it put that way, where he's someone that you can put in any story and thrive. But I think you're dead on with that one. So I asked someone else this, and I forgot who it was, but when the books come out, actually I think it was MP. So when the books come out, obviously we've read 5 books and the prequels, etc. What's the first thing you're going to really look for in TWOW or Dream?
I want to know what's going on at Hardhome in the books. Obviously, it's I don't know whether it's going to be the same thing, but later in the books that was on the TV show. I want to. Honestly, I think I'm desperate to find out what happens to Arya. The way that we obviously the Mercy chapter is in the Winds of Winter, but I don't think it's towards the end. I think we get more Arya chapters, and we see her back in Westeros. But I also again don't think it will be the same journey that she takes in the TV show.
Yeah, the one thing I thought was interesting about Arya and Sansa, and this has to do with the show and the actresses, they both had identical tattoos put on, really simple dates of when they started. And that happened before the filming of season 7. I thought that was more significant than just a random, hey, let's get a tattoo kind of a thing.
Interesting. So they both recently, in the last year or so, got matching tattoos of when they started on the show.
Yep.
Why do you think that's interesting?
Because I know that, well, in my opinion, I think they know that there's going to be an end for one of them, and they won't be around each other as much to do that in the future. And to signify their togetherness over this last, 6-7 years, and also because they weren't recast in the show, so they've been together since the beginning of the pilot, and
yeah, they kind of grew up on
coming
the
of age.
show.
They've actually grown up on this show, so
yeah. I think they're actually quite good friends in real life.
yes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's another tattoo and it's different dates.
They'll put that underneath it.
Yeah.
You died here and I died there.
Yeah.
That's funny. So Martin adds a ton of details with his, food and the castles, all that stuff. What is your favorite castle, would you say?
Oh, I think the Eyrie is probably my favorite, just because it's a challenge for me because I'm actually scared of heights. So to me, it just seems like really wow, that it's so high.
The sky cells scare you, huh?
Yeah. There's something very, but it's not just the height. There's something very different about that place. The fact that they have to evacuate it when it gets too cold for the winter, and one of my favorite small side characters is Maya Stone, talking about bastards, another of Robert's bastards. And I always thought that I hope we go back and see Maya, actually, because I think she was set up in the books as a character that could do with a little bit more fleshing out. So I don't know. I never read actually the Winds of Winter chapter, the Sansa Winds of Winter chapter. At there was a tourney, I think, where she gets in, with Harry the Heir, and I didn't read the entire chapter because it just seemed weird to me the way it was written. It was kind of like a Disney movie, and I didn't like the princess at the ball, and it was like I don't understand what's happening here. So I never managed to find my way through that, but I think Maya's in that as well. Maybe she's kind of like advising Sansa in the background, I'm not sure. But I always thought she was really badass, and I really liked her as a character. So, and a lot of the other, I'm quite interested in the Royce history as well. When I've not read all of the World of Ice and Fire, but I was quite interested in the history of the Royce family being one of the oldest, first men families.
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that their chair is weirwood, and it's disconnected obviously from the roots. But in Winterfell, we see Ned having, or Theon having, dreams from the weirwood, or at least we think it is. And that's totally disconnected. It's made of weirwood. Do you think they have that ability where even though they're not connected to the roots, they have the weirwood.net still connected?
Yeah, maybe there's like a memory to it. They sort of absorb memories. Maybe it's not as strong as the other weirwoods that are connected to some sort of network, but I think maybe it may still retain something, even if it's that far removed. I'm just trying to think actually of why I like the Eyrie above other castles, and I think it's just because it's the one that creeps me out so much. I can't imagine. You know, there's certain aspects of the book that you remember and think, oh my God. One of them is and just the way they're written as well. And I know that Martin is an excellent horror writer, and he really kind of builds up the atmosphere. But the Brienne getting her head bashed in was one of the most horrific scenes that I remember reading in the books, followed quite quickly by just the thought of the Sky Cells and how twisted that concept is, and the fact that the floor dips down so that you kind of, oh my God, yeah,
towards the edge.
There's not many things that I can imagine as being, you know, somebody who's afraid of heights. I can't imagine much worse actually than the Sky Cells. So I think I like the Eyrie just because it horrifies me so much.
I usually wait until the end to have you ask a question, and I probably should have started that in the beginning. But if there's a question that you want to ask me, feel free to do so anytime. And in the chat, if you guys have a question for Claire, please let me know. You can just put a question there. That'll help me find it.
I've got a question for you, John.
Oh, awesome.
It's an old one, and it's quite random, and not many people talk about this. It's about Tyrion, and it's about the shrooms that he's got in his sock. Do you think he's going to use them, and how and on who might he use them? Why are they in the story? Why has he referred to them a couple of times?
That is a detail that I've not really pursued. He's such a trickier person in the book than he is in the show, and his ability to use simple things, mostly his tongue, is pretty critical. So I can only assume that he's just waiting for the right moment. And this is, I believe, when he was on, when he got off the boat with the Aegon, correct?
Yeah, no, I think he picked them when he first arrived in Pentos from.
Before he was caught as a slave?
Yeah, but when he was still at Illyrio's manse in Pentos, I think he picked them from the garden and just sort of squirreled them away in his sock. They must be really sweaty and moldy and horrible by now, but yeah, he has referred to them a few times, and it just makes me wonder whether or not anyone in the chat, if anyone thinks that Tyrion is capable of suicide at any point.
I definitely think he's capable. I just don't think that he even thinks that way. From a person that's gone through so much already. He's not ready to die. He thinks he still has so much to contribute, and I think that's why he is such easily friended in the story, because he's such a weird person to look at, with both his war scars and his actual dwarfism. So yeah, I think he uses. Yeah, I don't see him as I think it's more of a tool to use. I could be wrong, but
yeah, see, that's really strange, because I have a completely different opinion. I think that Tyrion was one of, if not my favorite character for probably the first 3 books. I used to really enjoy curling up in bed and it's brilliant, it's a Tyrion chapter, fantastic. Nice. They were my favorite. But when he arrived and they did represent this quite well actually in the TV show, when he arrived in Pentos and rolled out of the barrel and he had his little beard, In the books, he became really quite dark. Obviously, he just killed his father, or he thought he'd killed his father, or he thought he killed somebody who may be his father. There's so maybe Tyrion gets off the hook for that at some point in the future, and it's like, oh, I know he's not a black and white character. There are lots of different shades with Tyrion, but he did seem to get considerably darker when he arrived in Pentos. And if you think back and look at it, yes, he's had all of the abuse and the name calling, but actually he's been quite a privileged little lion as well at the same time, up until he left Westeros. And his adventures in Essos, of Tyrion Lannister being sold at a slave market, who would have thought? Right. I thought the reference to the mushrooms, the kind of poisonous fungus in his sock. It's, oh my God, it could be something. Things are getting quite dark for Tyrion, but now I'm not sure. I don't think that's going to happen, because he's now, in the books, in the TV show, it's much far advanced. I think we've had like 2 seasons of him being like Bezzy mates with Daenerys, whereas in the books he's seen her and she doesn't know who he is. So maybe there's hope there. I don't know, but yeah, he seemed like quite darkly motivated when he left the mainland of Westeros. And it just makes me think, what's going to happen with those mushrooms?
It's funny, because I always thought he was a dark person, from the beginning, especially since he got married in that situation. I think he just went dark then.
Yeah.
Catherine Cronin asks, what POVs are you looking forward to most in TWOW?
Sam. It looks like it's all going down at the Citadel, and I also think that that's going to have something to do with Euron and the Ironborn coming down that way, like the red wine and through to Old Town, the Citadel. Well, I think it's also quite interesting that at the same time Sam's been brushing up on his archery skills, so I think that might come into play somehow. I'm fascinated to find out what's happening actually in Old Town with Sam. And I think Arya to find out what happens when she leaves Mars. Yeah,
it's funny you should say Sam, because I think he's probably more of a key. I mean, we always love the warriors, like Sandor and Jaime, etc. But I think Sam's a really interesting character. We've got a question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, definitely. Yeah.
We've got a question from Lav. She says, as far as opinions and theories go, what has changed from your first read through the books to now? And have you studied the books show even more?
Right. Okay. I'll try.
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
I'll try and be brief about this. I started watching the TV show and got to the end of the first episode and thought, this looks quite interesting. Watched the end of the first series, and thought, I have to know what happened. I cannot wait until next year. I have to read the books. And the reason that was hilarious is because I was actually living with somebody at the time who was an old school book reader, who'd been, waiting for them to come out. I think he'd probably started reading, if not from the beginning, very early on. So where we lived, there was this habit of just leaving books lying around in the bathroom. And it used to drive me absolutely crazy, and I used to just kick these books around and get this shit out of my way. These weird, crappy fantasy books that I've got no interest in whatsoever. They're always hanging around. So when I actually sat down, oh yeah, this is the TV show that's about those effing books that you've always got lying around the house that really annoy me. And now I'm the one that's like more into it than the person that I was living with at the time. So that's my story of how I got into it. What was the question again, John? It was
in regards to the first time you read it, and then since then you've reread it and changed your thoughts. So the original versus now.
The thing there is I did the really silly thing of, right, I've watched the first season, so I don't need to read Game of Thrones. I just want to find out what happens next. I'm going to go straight to the next book. And I read the entire series, the entire series of books, which just coincidentally happened to come out round about the same time that Dance was released. So I was it was a luxury position for me. I'd literally just finished reading Feast, and I can go to the shop and buy this other. That's how I thought things were in this world. I didn't realize we had to wait this long. I was spoiled at the time, just being able to pick up the next book. But then I went back. I've actually reread all of these books, I would say about 5-6 times, and at one point I just did them in rotation. I would finish Dance with Dragons, and the next week I would pick up Game of Thrones and just start again, purely because this is way before I got involved in things like YouTube and reading about theories and listening to other people's theories. I just thought it was a rollicking good read. It was an excellent story. It was something that you could just lose yourself in for a couple of hours, and it was my me time to sit and read a couple of chapters of these books. So, but it was only on the second kind of cycle, if you like, that I actually went back to read Game of Thrones after I'd read everything else. And oh my God, that just blew my mind completely. The amount of, yes, the TV show is actually a really good representation of the first book, but going back to read in detail Game of Thrones after having watched the first series and read the rest of the books was just amazing. So I think if one of the questions is favorite book, I would probably say Game of Thrones, just for that reason, because it gave me so much. And actually, I've read that book less than I've read everything else, because, of course, I skipped it in that first cycle. And I just think every time you pick that book up, there's something else. Oh, my God, I was looking for this, and now I've discovered this. And, you know, it's just one of those books. Yeah.
So what was the thing you did, you know, as far as theory goes? Was there anything that you've changed your mind on a million times?
No, not really. I think when it comes to theories, I've got a strange approach to it, I think. I love listening to people's theories, and I love having these discussions, because you can kind of stumble across the beginning of a theory sometimes when you're having these discussions, as I know MP was excited last night about the whole Stannis thing. And I do hope
that came out of nowhere, didn't it?
If you're listening, MP, get on it, because clearly we need to find out a bit more about this. Yeah. I know, but other people want to know, and I'm not going to say it. Yeah.
No, that was a great reveal that he was, you know, I was privileged to have it on my channel, so thanks.
Yeah, well, I think it was a combination of both of you, just backwards and forwards with it, to be honest. But
MP says, could you lift Marwyn up for him?
Yeah, I'll fine. I don't know what. I think he's asleep somewhere. I'll go and find him in a minute. Okay. Okay. I think that the way that I look at, maybe it's I'm just being really simplistic here. When I first read the books, I read it with, okay, something's happening here that we don't know. Something's going on that will be revealed at some point later on. So it kind of went it goes into your head as, oh, right, okay, this isn't very clear, and there's probably a reason for this not being very clear. So but I didn't at the time, you know, I didn't think about it in too much detail or obsess about certain things. I just had this knowledge of, okay, as I'm reading this, clearly there's a bit of a gap here, or there's a bit of a hole, or this is deliberately meant to sound this way, but actually it's probably something else. I'm not going to stop and think about that too much because I'm just enjoying the story so much. And it's just kind of getting through it in the knowledge that, yes, at some point we'll find out who Jon's parents are. I didn't, even through all of that, I'll be completely honest, even through all of those reads and rereads, didn't think about R plus L equals J, because I knew that it would be revealed at some point, so it didn't really matter to me that much at the time. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It doesn't catch you right away because you don't think the promises that Ned talks about and his vision in King's or in the Tower of Joy is that important the first time you're reading it, because you have to go later in the story to see where that has importance. And then
I think for most people,
until you do the reread.
Yeah, it's just a general kind of, okay, I know something's happening there, but I'm not going to stop and think about that right now. Now we can, because we've got this huge gap between the books. We can sit and go, oh, what could that have meant? And what might... So I'm fascinated by theories, and I'm really interested in hearing about what other people have got to say and how they interpret the text and the stories. I know that George deliberately writes layers and layers and layers, and what we think is obvious isn't always obvious, and so all of that is fascinating to me.
He gives you the answer, and then later he asks the question.
That's
very hard to pick up on a first read.
Definitely.
But Don says it's the theory of Stannis is the one true king. That's the theory he wants to know. He doesn't want to know anything else. So Jamie Sneed actually has another question, if I could take a few more minutes. When you're reading in the POV, who was that POV that really pleasantly surprised you? Was it Arya or?
What generally, which POV interested me?
Right.
Is that the question? Is that the question, Jamie? I'm looking at my phone now. I think there's probably a bit of a delay. Stannis. I had no real opinion about Stannis. No, sorry, Stannis hasn't got a point of view. So yeah, that was a character that I changed my mind on quite drastically. From being nonchalant about Stannis to being a huge Stannis supporter in the books. In terms of point of view, this might be a bit controversial, but I'm sure there are people out there that feel the same way as me. Cersei. The best way that I can explain this is I hated, and I mean really quite passionately hated, Cersei. And I was so looking forward to her getting her just desserts in the books. One of the most memorable moments for me is where she's with the High Septon. And this is in the books. Again, we can see that represented in the TV show, but in the books, oh my God, he just says that one word, no. And she spins to turn around to run away, and it's like, it's happening. It's all gonna come crashing down for Cersei. And I was almost salivating, waiting to read this. And when I read, I'm the kind of person who loves my sleep, and I don't like being disturbed from sleep. And I really felt a kind of like affinity. I felt as though I was being tortured myself when I was reading those chapters with Cersei in captivity, and she was constantly being woken up all the time in the and just, that sleep deprivation episode that she experienced. And then the walk of shame. And for me, it was almost like a read of shame, because I was so excited about what was going to happen. Yeah, let's tear a strip off Cersei. And at the end of it, I kind of felt dirty. I felt like
guilt.
Yeah, I kind of had to put the book to one side and reassess how I felt about things. And now I'm not saying that I'm a Cersei support. I'm not waving the flag for Cersei here at all whatsoever.
Good to hear.
But that experience for me made me, when I went back to reread, I wouldn't say sympathetic and I wouldn't say understanding, but there are certain bits in the dialogue. For example, when she's talking about what Robert was like with her, and how brutal and aggressive he could be with her. To me, it sounded as though she was experiencing, that she was subject to rape quite often from Robert. And this is a guy who, yeah, it wasn't Rhaegar, but she kind of fell in love with him and adored him right at the beginning of this union. And I don't know, if you change your thinking sometimes slightly on Cersei and maybe think about somebody who you know in real life who maybe has similar sort of qualities to Cersei, and I think she's various shades of grey. She's, again, not a black and white character.
I like the grey reference.
She's crazy and she's insane, and I do not feel sorry for her at all in general. But I think there are just some. Yeah, I've changed my mind, definitely, as a point of view. Gotcha. Character. I've changed my mind on Cersei, and probably a number of other characters, but Cersei stands out. What about you?
Well, you mentioned the Cersei part. I always thought, when she was describing Robert, because we hear the description from the whores that he's with, that he was, nice and blah, 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 and took care of, really they enjoyed being with the king. At least that's the impression that I got. So when I read the part about Cersei, I just assumed that it was just her lying, as her way of manipulating, similar to what she did with Catelyn at Winterfell when she was visiting her at Bran's bedside. I just assumed that it was a lie and it was all made up. So I don't have the same guilt, condemnation kind of feeling when she did her walk of shame. It was just like, it's a small part of what she deserves.
I think if my husband was a baby killer and a rapist, I might be a bit pissed off from time to time. Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. I love that. I think that's appropriate. Callum actually has an interesting question, and I don't really know how to answer that. He says, what is the significance of the Winds of Winter not following the pattern of the previous titles? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, question? So you've got Game of Thrones, Storm of Swords, Clash of Kings, Dance with Dragons, and now you've got the Winds of Winter. So it's different. It's a different title sequencing. Everything else has been a ... but this time it's the Winds of Winter.
Okay.
And even A Dream of Spring is back to the
A
Dream of Spring. So what, in terms of titles, that one stands out as being different to all the others. So I guess what he's asking there is there any particular significance to that title?
Well, it was changed, right? Because originally it was The Wolves Return or something.
Yeah. Yeah, wasn't it like the wolf? Yeah, no, I'm thinking of the She-Wolves of Winterfell. Yeah, it was changed. It was changed. Does anybody know what it was originally?
A Time for Wolves.
A Time for wolves.
Thanks, Alicia Kingston.
So, I don't know. What do you think, Callum? What does anybody else think in the chat? Why would that be different? And if it has changed, it's changed from a time. So it's gone back to the. I don't know. Maybe it means something.
Marie Hill commented, "The like is the end," and I'm not quite sure that I agree with that, but it's a good point.
Callum said he thinks The Winds of Winter will be the most powerful book in terms of plot progression, and that A Dream of Spring will be wrapping up all of the plot points. So yeah, the Winds of Winter could be the best book yet, because it's the kind of, it's the climax before everything gets wrapped up.
Yeah, it kind of has to be, doesn't it? I mean, we've had 2 books of opened and expanding universes that we been privileged to read, but it's got to come to an end. So
yeah, he does seem to be narrowing things down. There are no more new point of view characters, which I think is why he's excluding the prologue there, because it's not a point of view chapter. So I think he's going to get really creative in that prologue. I'm dying. Actually, that's the chapter that I'm really desperate to read more than anything else, is the prologue. And luckily, it's right at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, the Don says it probably will have 8 books, because I agree 100%. I don't think we're going to finish this
Yeah.
in a dream.
So yeah, because some of the books, it's difficult for me to talk about this, because some of the UK edition books I think they've been split into either more volumes, or the book, the way they're published here is slightly different.
I see.
I think there are I don't know, I think Storm is possibly split into 2, and they've got like subtitles. Oh God. Yeah, I can't think of what. One of them is like a blood something or other. If anyone's there from the UK and you can explain what I'm talking about here. But I think Storm of Swords was split into 2 separate books.
Yeah, MP says 2 for Storm and 2 for Dance. So
yes, yeah. Whereas I've got just 1 big volume of Dance with Dragons.
Very big volume.
Yeah,
it's huge.
A tome.
Yeah. Your vocabulary is better.
Are you disappointed that there'll only be 8 episodes?
Well, I've heard 7, and I don't care the number as long as we get a good story. I've always wondered why we are only getting 10 episodes to begin with, and then 50-minute episodes at that. So if they're an hour and 10 minutes each, then that's fine. As long as the story's good. I don't really. Yeah. My only gripe has ever been with the story is things like Dorne and last year Arya, where they're not really telling us the story. It's we already know certain things, and they're just avoiding it. The Kingsmoot, another one. It just does it, like the first 3 seasons. I can't really criticize them. There's nothing really to criticize. So as long as we'll work it out like the first 3, then I'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, while you're grabbing another couple of questions, I'm going to see if I can find the dog.
Okay. So everybody out there, if you have any questions, let me know. Just hit the queue but first, and I'll ask Claire when she gets back. I really do thank you for being here. Like I said, Marie Hill's here, Monero Geek TV, T-Baby, Maester Payne is here, Barbara Reveal, Elko Deborah, Alicia Kingston, thank you for being here, and I can't wait to have you on. That's going to be so much fun. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a great week. We have Tinker Jasso and Jerry the Targaryen. Steamboat will be on this week. So thanks to Eli Gilma came in. Thanks for being here. And who do we have here?
Oh, this is Marwyn.
I know. I'm just wanting you to.
Marwyn the Cuddly Mage.
That is awesome. Yeah, if you follow MP's Instagram, he's on there quite a bit. Claire, I don't think I've seen Marwyn on your Instagram page.
No, he's got a separate Instagram account.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that. You're right.
So if you want to see Marwyn's adventures, he's on Instagram.
That's awesome.
I think it's Marwyn the Jack.
Right. Very cute. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
MP, I hope you got your Marwyn fix, buddy.
Yes,
awesome.
he did. Yeah.
Did you see any other questions? Because I'm not. Whoa, back up.
I think that was it. Any final questions, anyone?
So while we're waiting for just a second, do you have anything coming up other than your fantastic nail polishing videos? Because I think you just had one out today.
No, I do regular like collections and whole videos. Things are changing all the time with Bubble Off, but we've got our first candle collection that's coming out. So if anyone's in the UK, it's going to be difficult. It's so difficult to ship things overseas, and I've had so many people in the US say, "Oh, can you send me?" We did send a shit ton of fizz bombs over to Kraken a couple of years ago, and it ended up costing us more in shipping than it did for the whole, like the actual items themselves. So it's ridiculously expensive. So we're going to see if we can find a cheaper way to ship internationally. But at the moment, if you're in the UK, check out this new candle collection. It's not a black candle. It's actually eco soy wax, but
nice soy wax. Yeah. See, that's the kind of stuff you learn on AU Pack Mule.
Yeah, it's not a glass candle.
Jamie Sneed has a question. What POV from someone you didn't expect would you? Oh, that's the same question. Yeah, he already asked that. Did I misunderstand that, Jamie? I thought we answered that question. Oh, I know what it is.
What point of view from someone you didn't expect would be a pleasant surprise? Oh God, I don't know. That's a really difficult one. T-Baby, Q&A. Will Tyrion try to claim Sansa when he comes back to Westeros? I don't think he will, but I kind of think he should. Yeah, I don't think he will, but I think he should. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just trying to think about the question a little bit more because it's deeper than I'm used to getting.
Well, it's from T-Baby, so
of course. Yeah, exactly. Good point.
You've got to be on your toes. He should. He needs the title and the lands. Yeah, he does.
Do you think he would have lost her claim? I mean, based on the Boltons, etc.
In the situation that they would have been in, maybe, but it all depends on whether or not the Grand Northern Conspiracy is real. because they would have backed Sansa, whoever she was with, because she's a Stark. Yeah. I don't know. I would have to think about that one and come back to you.
Yeah, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
We'll have to have T-Baby back on and rehash some of those.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. The Don wants to know also in regards to the Bubble Off store. Can you re-describe a little bit about that, because we talked about that in the very beginning of the episode, but a lot of people have joined since then. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Claire's doing, and then we're going to let her go because I know she's got a long day tomorrow as well.
Okay. It's me and my sister, and we've been going for about 2 or 3 years, but we've been operating mainly on craft market circuit. But we just opened up our first shop, and we hand make everything on the premises, and it's vegan skincare, soaps, bath bombs. So it's like that other, it's a little bit like that other store that everybody knows that rhymes with plush.
That's awesome.
But it's cheaper and better.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's all natural ingredients. It's I think one of the reasons that a lot of people do this, a lot of people make soaps, and fizz bombs are quite easy to make. But when you're selling anything that goes on the skin, anything whatsoever, it all has to be cosmetically assessed. Mm-hmm. Which means that everything we make has to go to a chemist, and they say, yes, this is safe to use. And every time that happens, there's yes, exactly. And I think that puts a lot of people off, which is why it's been quite a slow process. But we've built up quite a fan base in the UK, and we've got some regulars and locals that are already interested in the new shop. But we do trade also online. We stock other suppliers, and we're getting more involved in wholesale side of things. So it's all very interesting and exciting. Basically, my sister makes most of it, and I'm kind of front of house selling things and speaking to people.
You're the marketing arm.
Kind of, yeah.
She's the manufacturing end.
I run things.
So you have a great moose in your store. What's the moose's name?
Well, we had a competition for the moose, and unsurprisingly, he ended up being called Bruce the Moose.
I love it. I have a moose cookie jar, and I that's just fun.
But yeah, we've got 2 unicorns at the moment. One of them is currently being decapitated, which is really difficult to explain when you're supposed to be a vegan skincare. But yeah, we had a little bit of an accident with the unicorn. And we sell unicorn poop. So if anyone's running out of that, you don't want to be out of unicorn
that's
poop.
An interesting. Wow.
We are fine purveyors of unicorn poop, hand-picked every morning.
You just can't find that anywhere, I mean, you could look online forever before you could find that.
Yeah. There's a couple of them in the north of the UK, and we've got them.
So for any of you who don't know, like are living under a rock or what have you, Teflon TV did a great video earlier today, live stream. Tinker Jasso did a Q&A earlier on her. She has a huge amount of subscribers, so she was just thanking everybody for that and that way. James Bichelle from the Hypes Watch did a top 10 movie pick from the 90s, so make sure you guys go and check those out. I really appreciate you being here. Everybody that's in the chat, everybody that's going to watch later. Sam Sand just finally came on, so thanks for being here. And then Claire, I really can't tell you how much I do appreciate you taking the time. You've got all these things going on, and yet you've been able to graciously come on today and spend some time with us, share some love and some knowledge on Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Would you do me a favor and say goodbye to everybody? Because I know that everybody would appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you, John. Thanks very much. This is a very impromptu thing. It was just kind of, oh, this is happening. Should we have it? Yeah. So it was very last minute. But thank you very much. I think these things usually go best when it happens this way. I've really enjoyed talking to you and chatting to you. It's been a while since I've thought about or talked about Game of Thrones in great detail. Anyway, I am looking forward to the next TV season, and carry on theorizing, everybody, and I'm sure I will catch you all soon. But thank you, John.
You're so very welcome. Again, you guys have a great day. We'll catch you probably tomorrow and on another live stream, and hope you guys can catch that as well. In the meantime, grin like a dog, wander aimlessly, eat dessert first. Have a great day, everybody.